Time for the Word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me right now is Portfolio Wealth Advisors President and Chief Investment Officer Lee Munson, Stifel Chief Economist Lindsay Piazza, and Rosecliff Capital CEO Managing Partner Mike Murphy. Great to see everybody this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Lindsay, I want to kick things off with you. We're looking at a market that once again has a firm tone, but we are all waiting and watching to see what the chairman of the Federal Reserve will say. Jay Powell is set to speak this morning at the Jackson Hole conference. He will speak virtually, and we want to know what he's going to say about the central bank beginning tapering asset purchases. Lindsay, do you think anything has changed in terms of the Fed's timeline to begin pulling that stimulus back, given the fact that we have been looking at some weaker than expected economic data?
No, I don't think so. I think the Fed is going to maintain a relatively optimistic assessment of the economy, particularly from a labor market standpoint. Looking at last month's payrolls, adding nearly 1 million jobs alone and an unemployment rate now well below 6%. The Fed is also likely to emphasize the still transitory expected nature of inflation, with some price categories slowing their ascent or even posting an outright decline. Now, the Fed at the same time is likely to emphasize the ongoing risks to the economy with the surge in the Delta variant and international uncertainty as we do watch events in the Middle East unfold. So from a policy perspective, the Fed is likely to walk a very delicate line. On the one hand, the chairman is likely to emphasize the still ongoing need for patience remaining on the sideline with these accommodative policies in place. On the other hand, he's likely to hint at the likelihood that the Fed will begin to lift its foot off the gas should the domestic economy remain on solid footing and really bypass some of these risks or barriers in the near term to the economy.
Any of this, do you think, will be a surprise for the markets, Lindsay? Do you think we're going to see a market move post this speech?
No, I don't think the Fed is going to say anything that's going to undermine market expectations. Again, the Fed likely to hint at some sort of outline for an initiation of removing that taper process or removing those asset purchases, really keeping the market in line with their expectation for a formal announcement by the end of the year, making taper a likely 2022 event, again, if the economy is able to maintain solid footing and continue to move past some of these short-term barriers to growth.
All right, let me move on to crypto, Mike. Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey is calling for public input on crypto legislation. The senator says he plans to use the response as informing that legislation to clarify the uncertainty around how existing laws apply to cryptocurrencies. Mike, look, he is a Republican. He can't call hearings, right? And he can't, bring up any legislation for a vote, but he's trying to get input to try to, create and shape policy. There is a gulf between Brown and Toomey, but what do you think about Toomey's ideas and where regulation goes around crypto?
Good morning, Maria. So Senator Toomey is very pro-cryptocurrency, and now he wants to avoid over-regulating the space. But, when you talk about people's money and investing, there are going to be regulations. There need to be increased regulations around the space. So I think what Senator Toomey is doing is the right move, saying, I'm not an expert in this, so let's get some feedback. So this is going to impact everybody who is an investor, whether they're buying the actual Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, or investing in things like the blockchain. So getting feedback from people who are experts, I think is a great move. And we need more of our lawmakers to do that because they're not experts in a lot of things that they're trying to write laws about.
Let me just point out that the Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Gary Gensler has chosen Barbara Roper as senior advisor. And Barbara Roper, this means it could be an overhaul to the regulatory framework, according to Cowen and Company this morning. Roper will likely push consumer protection. She's been a critic of expanding access to private equity. Any thoughts on this choice, Mike, in terms of its impact?
Yeah, it seems like, Maria, that direction is what I was speaking about, where you might get over-regulation. This is an early market. It's a growing market. Some people believe it's the next internet that's coming that's going to change the way business is done. And what you don't want to happen is to have over-regulation come in and really limit growth or stifle growth or just not have the cryptocurrency market become what it could be. So we need to let it grow, but we do need people there who understand the space, who can really monitor it so that individual investors aren't left holding the bag at some point. So we need laws, we need regulation, but we don't want to over-regulate it. It's a fine line, but hopefully they get it right.
Yeah, and they're talking about what this means in terms of what Roper's ideas will be in terms of what's in the best interest of investors. All right, let me move on to oil. Lee, the Taliban's control of Afghanistan, growing risk to oil trade. It gives Iran another place to sell its oil, creates a safe haven for terrorists where al-Qaeda and ISIS can regain control over the global oil markets. What are your thoughts on the supply-demand situation? Oil prices this morning up 1.5%, the dollar higher at 68.45. From an investment standpoint, Lee, what do you do?
I think you can expect the commodity prices in general and oil are going to continue to rise through the exit on the 31st. I think the question is, are we going to have this premium to oil markets persist between now and the end of the year? And why is that relevant? Because we're expecting heavier industrial production. We're expecting a Fed that has easy money. And so, the thought is this going to start hurting industrials because a lot of their major input are those energy prices, and that's still not fueled by windmills and solar powers. It's done by natural gas and oil. So while I'm not really sure how it's going to affect, really a longer term situation here in the U.S., it's going to cause a little pressure. So I think that's even more reason for the Fed to continue their, let's just say, their more dovish activities. I don't know if this is going to be one of the inputs that they're going to look at. I doubt it's going to be one of the inputs that they look at. But I think if you're an investor, I wouldn't necessarily think that I want to buy ExxonMobil thinking the price of oil is going to go up. And I think it just goes to show how entwined Afghan is. People don't understand the amount of cash business that the Taliban gets from the opium trade. And ironically, the biggest threat to the Taliban and their cash flow is Chinese manufactured fentanyl, especially when it comes to this country. So it's complex, but I wouldn't read too much into it, and I wouldn't go off and try to game oil or try to get long thinking you're going to make a lot of money between now and the 31st.
Lee, tell me about that fentanyl component. Why is that such a pressure component for Afghanistan?
Well, because, traditionally in this country, when you look at drug usage, it was really, we went from sort of a heroin market, and over the years, we got into this pill business, and that's been, all over the media. We've seen what that has happened. And so you're starting to, it has already happened, where you're seeing a substitution from classic, what we call, opium derivatives and the opium trade, which, is heroin, versus this synthetic stuff that can be packaged easily. You can put it in, a piece of mail. It doesn't require the same sophisticated supply chain to get it into this country to sell to people. And I think that that's going to be, we're going to see how that plays out in the next couple of years. But this could be really the start of really strangling some of the cash flow. All I can say is I hope the Taliban have been saving their money over the past decade from that trade, because they might think the Chinese are their friends, but they're really killing this industry. And remember, this is a horrible industry that kills Americans, but the Chinese are becoming leaders in that, and the Taliban are becoming dinosaurs at that. We'll see how it plays out. I don't think it's going to be good for the Taliban.
Yeah, Lee, it's great to get your insights on that. Lee Munson, Lindsay Piegza, and Mike Murphy, great to see you all. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We appreciate your time. Joining the conversation.